Hey guys, Garrett197 again. This time with a review of the 1/72nd scale Dougram from the Fang of the Sun Dougram series. And this is also the first model kit made by Max Factory, the company that has given us all those great Figmas. So the big question is, will this be just as great? And I gotta start by pointing out one irony in the manual. So according to the manual, this kit is almost entirely snapped together, but a few minor parts require gluing. And of course the fun thing is that those parts did not require gluing at all and were actually some of the best parts to fit on the model kit. A few other parts, however, would be better off with a dab of glue here and there. Biggest example? Well, the second biggest example being the turbo zack, which has a nice gap here. So the pegs just aren't strong enough to keep this thing together, and well, I'm definitely gonna glue this after this review. Another small problem is that these vents here sometimes tend to fall off, but not all that often. A bigger problem is the back here. Yeah, that just springs back up and doesn't want to stay at all, so that's also going to require a bit of glue. But when we look at the colors, things immediately start looking up. So when we see it, it's almost entirely color accurate. We have very nice dark navy blue. We have white for a lot of the model kit, and then we have tiny bits of red all over, and gray for the joints and various other little parts. And also we get clear parts, very nice. We have the canopy here, and that is actually pre-painted. As you can see, the white and the blue, it just came like that on the runner. Just very good. And we have clear here in the scope thing, and for extra detail, we do get these water slide decals, and see these red parts here? Well, for the few small parts that weren't color accurate, we do get these. So these two go on the sensor, which should be red. These parts go on the linear gun. This one goes on his crotch here, which should be red. And then we have the usual, marking things that the Dougram would have. These go on the shoulder, and one very good one for, believe it or not, but this is for the control panel, which goes in there. So that is awesome, really good attention to detail there. So that is very good, which means that the only painting you will really have to do is the gray on the turbo zack, which is somewhat of a disappointment because, hey, it would have been better if they just molded it in gray. Anyways, we have gray on the model kit, so just split it up a bit more and give us a color accurate turbo zack. But still, the white doesn't look too bad. And then also a bit of gray on the linear gun here. Then when we go on to the articulation, things unfortunately aren't that great anymore. It's not as bad as I was expecting from what I had seen from the promotional pictures, but still not quite as good as we would want it to be. The head goes up and down a bit, though you can extend it. Alright, let's start by looking at this, and this is actually anime accurate. The way the head would be removed and placed in there, it does actually have this unit on there, so that is some good anime accuracy. So that's a really cool feature they did there. But then back to articulation, when you extend it, it does go up and down slightly more, though it will reveal a somewhat ugly neck. Then, of course, we'll also rotate around all the way. And the coolest thing about the head is, of course, the opening cockpit. And that is not all, because we also have that extra door in there. And sometimes in the anime, it has been seen to open up. And this is actually one of those pieces that the manual wants you to glue. But as you can see, you can just open it up, click it in there, and it will stay just as well as you'd glued it. So I definitely would say do not glue it, because hey, it just doesn't require glue. And of course, if you don't glue it, you can put it in whatever position you want it to be. And this sensor does not move, by the way, in case you were wondering that. What does move are these, well, multi-launchers. They will turn around. And you can also remove them, because in here you should also be able to put a missile pod, which is unfortunately not included. Then the arms rotate around, and this is the biggest problem I have with this model kit. The arms just don't want to stay in, and it's gonna pop out a lot. Also go forwards on a hinge, then they go up about that far until they pop out. And I gotta say, that is some really nice detail up here. I mean, we have the ridges there, so that is really sweet. The one problem I have while cutting off the parts is that, as you can see, there are some ugly nub marks on the gray. I was able to hide them on the dark navy blue with my black Gundam marker, but the big problem with the nubs is the way the runners are designed. They essentially force you to cut off the parts exactly at the part, so there you can't really leave a bit of the nub on the part as you would normally do, and then you shave off that little excess on that's still on the part. Here you just cut it off exactly at the part, which is not the way to do it, which is really unfortunate and can cause some nub marks on the gray parts and on the blue parts. But hey, what you gonna do? And then the shields here also go up and down, then arms rotate around, and here you can already see another small problem forming, and that is it rotates around here and then also at the elbow. Oh, for fuck's sake. So if you're trying to rotate it around, sometimes you will just rotate around the lower part, and then you're gonna have to fiddle with it to get it back. So it can be a bit messy to really get the arm in the position you want it to be, because of course when you want to move just the lower arm, the upper arm is going to rotate, and when you want to rotate the upper arm, the lower arm is going to rotate. That's just how things go. Then we get a 90 degrees bend on one joint. Would have been cool to have two joints. Hands are on ball joints, will wiggle around, turn out, and do everything a ball joint does. And just put that over there. And the waist has a ball joint in there, so we do get some nice articulation from there. Side skirts go out a bit, but as you can see, there's not really a point in them going out that far, because the legs unfortunately are somewhat hindered. They will also go forwards and backwards, but as you can see, that is very minimal. The legs go forward about that far, which is still nice, and backwards a lot further. So this is one of the few models where backwards mobility is a lot better than forwards mobility, even to the point where I just started wondering if I might have put the model kit together wrongly, but no. The knees are double jointed, believe it or not, but that is all the lower joint gets you. That is absolutely nothing, which unfortunately also means that you cannot pull off some of the Dougram's signature poses, you know, kneeling and firing the turbo zack, or just kneeling and firing the linear gun, which is, for me, the biggest disappointment of this kit. But judging by the promotional pictures, I already kind of braced myself for it. And there's really no way to pull it off correctly unless, yeah, this is just gonna look silly. Because the feet, well, they do get some nice articulation, but just not great enough to compensate for the weak knee articulation. That is really something they should have fixed. I mean, at least try to make the model kit be able to pull off some of the signature poses. And we'll also go side to side. It's on a hinge at the top and a ball joint at the bottom. Another problem with the feet is that they are on the loose side, and that is because inside there is a gray part which you have to push in, and that provides the friction for the hinge at the top. The problem is you simply cannot push in that gray part deep enough. And of course, after you've tried pushing it in, there's no way you're gonna be able to get that part out. I mean, I tried everything. I rammed it on my table, you know, at the corner of the table, just tried to push it in there, but I think my table was going to give up sooner than the model. So that is unfortunate, but I think also the ball joint isn't the best one in there. So the good news is that for the past few days it still hasn't collapsed, so they are still sturdy enough to hold up the Dougram in most poses. So it's definitely not the worst model kit. Well, they're definitely not the worst feet on a model kit I've had so far. Fortunately, things will start looking up again with the accessories. Starting off with the basic linear gun here, and even though it might look like it can mount on both arms, only the right arm here has the gap in it to fit the peg, and the left arm is just nice and smooth. However, if you do want two linear guns on your Dougram, just buy a second Dougram, then switch those arm guards around, because or just switch the entire arm around, because the arms are, well, the lower arms are pretty much identical. It's not like it has some weird curve going one way or the other. So that's already a nice accessory, and if only you could aim it without the arm popping out entirely. Then the second signature accessory of the Dougram, the Turbo Zack. Well, it was called the Turbo Zack in the series, but according to the manual, it's apparently the Turbo Sack. So pronounce it whichever way you want. I guess that's the same kind of debate we're having. Should this model kit or this machine be called Dougram, as they do in the series, or Dougram, as you would think when you just look at the written name? But hey, very cool accessory, and I really like the way these pipes go in there, because I don't think I've really specifically mentioned this, but when you look at the machine itself, it really has these intakes, so that is really cool, and the pipes go over them. And also the back, we do have that gap there, but it doesn't look that out of place. You just shove it in there. And even though I said that the feet are on the weak side, it has no problems wielding the Turbo Zack at all. And then the mobility it has is this just folds over. And then we're also getting an extra left hand. You just pop out this one here. And also a cool thing about the left hands is that they have double Vulcan guns there. And you just slide this over, and then you gotta fiddle around with the arm. And hey, it wants to work this time. So just put that in here. Be careful not to pop out the arm. And there we go. And now if only the Dougram could crouch like the Revoltech, that would have been awesome. But hey, we can still hold on to it, and really good attention to detail that they did give us that extra hand to hold on to the Turbo Zack. Talking about extra hands, we do get I just gave it a compliment about its good feet. Well, if you stabilize it enough, it should be able to stand up straight. Come on, you can do it. I guess it was just a little bit off balance. Then we also get two extra open hands, and we also get a few more accessories, and they're just extra things. We get one more extra control panel, and this is for use with, gotta see I picked the correct one, with this, no, not this one, this one. And this is identical to the canopy that we already have. However, this one cannot be opened up when you put it in there. But it is easier to paint. For example, I guess if you want to give your Dougram a custom paint job, or if you just want to paint it completely by yourself. And then the window here is open up, so we also get an extra window to put in there. And then we get yet another clear canopy. And this one, well, once again, it's clear, just identical to the other ones, but I guess this is going to be easier to paint. Because if you want to paint a canopy, and well, you're not quite sure that you're good at it, you're going to get a lot of chances to paint it correctly. And that is all for the accessories. As I've said before, unfortunately, we do not get the missile pod that would go on the right side of the head, as illustrated here by the Revoltech. So it would have been cool if you gotten that, but even back in the 80s, we had two releases of the Dougram. The normal Dougram, like this, and then the yacht type, and that refers to that little missile pod that goes on here. So that's the only difference between the normal Dougram and the Dougram yacht type. Oh, and a bit more articulation on the Turbo Zack, well, on the cannon of the Turbo Zack, also goes slightly left and right, though I'm not sure if it's really supposed to do that, or if the polycap just has a bit of give there. And finally, let's have a good look at the tiny crin that pilots this thing. Let's see if I can just shake him out, or if he's already stuck in there. Nope, looks like he ain't coming out. So we're just gonna have to grab the manual, because the crin in there is very, very nicely detailed, especially for such a small figurine. Grabbing the manual here. And believe it or not, but this is exactly how it looks. This isn't some kind of touched up picture where, of course, the detail isn't anything like we get on the actual figure. If you can paint, this is the detail you can get out of it. That is how detailed that small grin is. That one small 1/72nd scale figurine. So, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Some really good attention to detail. Talking about attention to detail, these things here on the back of his feet also go up and down. And I guess these are used to secure him to trailers or stuff like that. Or maybe to tow him out if he's fallen over. Who knows? Be creative. As always, the inevitable question is, do you want to buy this? Well, overall, it's a great looking model. Very good attention to detail. Nice accessories. But then, of course, there are those few flaws. The articulation could have been better. We do have those few parts that don't really go together all that well, so it does kind of show that it is Max Factory's first model kit. And then when we take into account the price, which is going to set you back a significant 3,619 yen, or really being specific, it might turn you off a bit, but that's still not to say that if you're a fan of the Dougram or Fang of the Sun Dougram series, this is still probably one of the best ways to get a Dougram. Yes, it is expensive, but as I said, you are getting a great model for it straight out of the box. Even if you're just going to straight build it, it's going to look great, and even more so if you're going to paint it, apply the waterside decals, it's still going to look really, really good. And of course, like I said, you don't really have a lot of good alternatives. So overall, if you're willing to spend the money, you will definitely get your money's worth with this kit, even though it would have been better if it was slightly cheaper. However, one big however, and that is if you really, really care about articulation and those signature poses that the Dougram pulls off in the show, then it might be better off getting the Revoltech. And that means a lot coming from me because I really don't like the Revoltechs. Here we go, and of course the problem with the Revoltech is the proportions are a bit out of whack. It doesn't look quite as good, but it can pull off all those poses, and it can also pull off that one pose from the first episode, I believe, for the Dougram, is kind of just sitting there being rusted, and also the final episode. So yeah, that is something to take into consideration if you really, really care about articulation, and otherwise just go for this model kit. Like I said, it will still look great. But then let's do a few comparisons of the price, which is also why on the one hand, I think that this is an expensive model, but on the other hand, when comparing it to certain other model kits, it's not that expensive. Of course, when we compare it to my forte, or my niche, the Gundam models from Bandai, then this kit looks horribly expensive. When we would compare it to the Bandai model kit, this is obviously in line with the 1/44 scale high grades. It has somewhat less articulation, but the detail is better, so it would fit right in. And I would say that if this was a higher grade from Bandai, the same size, it would be around 2,000 yen. Probably a bit cheaper, but hey, let's give it the benefit of the doubt here, 2,000 yen. So that, considering that this kit retails for 3,600 yen now, well, 3,619 yen, that might make it seem horribly expensive when we look at it through Gundam glasses, because of course 3,619 yen will get you a very nice modern muscle race, something like a Zaku 2.0. So when we look at it like that, this kit does not look appealing in the slightest. However, when we compare to something from, let's say, Kotobukiya, the Metabot kits here, Metabee here retails for 3,200 yen, Cyan Dog retails for 3,800 yen. Suddenly, the Dougram's price is looking a lot more reasonable now. That is not to forget, of course, that the Metabots do come with a few extra fun things, and they have like guns that actually shoot, but hey, the Dougram is suddenly looking a lot more appealing. And let's make him look even more appealing when comparing him to one of my least favorite models ever, the Legios Eta from Wave Corporation, which retails for 3,600 yen and is significantly worse in every single way than the Dougram, making the Dougram look like the best thing ever. So yeah, this is really a horrible model. Get out of my sight. So yeah, the price really depends on what your personal worth is. If you think even for a second that 3,619 yen is worth it, then it absolutely is. And I am really hoping that we're gonna get more of the Dougram series. And the good news is that if we look at the runners, there are a few parts left on it. So that means that these runners are generic runners. And why is that a good sign? Well, that means that they are planning to make other models using these same runners. So I really hope that we're going to get a soltic or a blockhead or whatever. Anything would be great. Or who knows, maybe we're going to get some other old models from Max Factory. Either way, I'll definitely pick those up. So that's all for this review, and see you guys next time.